because this is a really interesting concept that not enough people talk about. When you are creating a live piece of content, when you're streaming live, or you have like a really tight deadline, so you can't really mess up a lot, your brain activates in such a different way than when you're creating content that's recorded. You mess up so much more.
Welcome back to another episode of Oh My Pod. Thanks for tuning in again. I am 50% of your hosts, Justin J. Moore, and the other 50% is my fiancée, Celine Albertini. Today's episode is a repeat guest, our first repeat guest, who we're bringing back onto the show, Ana Xavier. Hope I'm saying that last name right. We just learned how to say it correctly, and I might have butchered it. But she's the founder of The Podcast Space. Originally from Portugal, Ana created her first podcast back in 2008 while completing her Bachelor's of Science in Communications and Journalism from the University of Porto. After almost a decade of experience in podcasting, broadcasting, and digital marketing in Portugal and London, UK, Ana moved to Dallas, Texas in 2016. As a skilled podcast producer and strategist, Ana saw the opportunity to help entrepreneurs get their message across and also to create a more meaningful impact on the world. In January 2020, she founded The Podcast Space, an online podcast consulting agency where she works with female entrepreneurs who support the betterment of others and their communities. Along the way, she mentors them to make a greater positive impact on their audience, as well as to become better hosts. Ana has helped professionals and entrepreneurs all over the world improve their podcasts, double their listenership, and stand out like a true leader in their industry. Ana's superpower is the ability to help clients identify a podcast idea that accelerates their business or professional goals, establishes trust with their ideal customer, and avoids content creator overwhelm. Her weekly show, The Podcast Space, is a must-follow in 2023. So what are you going to get from this episode? We tried to keep it focused mostly on LinkedIn, but we ended up talking a lot about the importance of creating personalized content, like showing your personal life in your content as a business owner. So this episode will be useful for learning how to post more personal content and where to post it, and getting over the hump of like having the confidence to show yourself in that way. So yeah, hope you enjoy it. And as always, if you do and you found it valuable, please don't keep it all to yourself. Share it with somebody else. Thanks. Enjoy. Okay, Ana, welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show, I should say. How are you?
I'm good. Well, thank you for having me. It's always a delight to talk to you guys and to kind of like shine a light on something new for your audience as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like some interviews can be a little bit like nerve-wracking, and like you're kind of like feel like you're like a little on edge to like make everything go right. But I feel like our last interview, and even just hopping on the call now and having our little pre-chat, it's just like very like chill, like very relaxed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again,
now
I
we
think,
know each other.
Yes, exactly. That's one of the benefits of like bringing in a guest. You're like, you just already flow. It's easy.
Exactly. Yeah. And we were just saying like we should have recorded our whole pre-chat. We talked for like 5 minutes about what we were going to focus on. And originally we were talking about a surge in downloads that Ana had on her podcast. And that got us talking about like bots, download bots, and AI downloading episodes and stuff. So we thought that down the road we bring Ana on again, because we're all doing the same thing. So like it just makes sense. But we decided that we're actually going to talk about something that we've never talked about before, because we did talk about the download bots at one point, I think on episode 15. We're just going to chat about LinkedIn, and our audience, I think, is a good mix between coaches who are podcasters, like independent podcasters, and then just independent podcasters in general. I think that this episode is particularly useful to coaches because LinkedIn is obviously a place where a lot of those people hang out. But even just with independent podcasters, like maybe I really don't know a lot about LinkedIn, but I know that there's certain groups that people share their shows in. There's it's a platform, I guess, for more professional interactions. So, but Ana is actually the expert here. She's done a lot on LinkedIn. I'm constantly seeing her stuff pop up. Her content's very like recognizable with that yellow color. And so, yeah, first of all, like tell us a bit about how it is with you, how your sabbatical was and everything like that. And then we can hop into the juicy LinkedIn stuff.
Sure. Yes. Okay. So, well, thank you for your kind comments. I always try to make my content very approachable and understandable by people who are just starting in the podcast world, but also for people like you who are peers. And I always try to take it an approach that is like understandable on both sides, because when you know so much at some point, it's really hard to explain your stuff like, you know, to a 5-year-old or something like that. So that's actually the approach that I try to take whenever I create any type of content. And so it's interesting because I went on a sabbatical for a month, and I was like, okay, I felt like I had been saying that I was burned out since the beginning of the year. Which is a little ridiculous, but I was like, I really feel like I need to take a break. So I prepared what became like a Summer Spark series, which was just audio-only episodes to help my audience while they were during August, like preparing for their like last quarter of the year and stuff like that, just to get, you know, their juices flowing and just bringing awareness. So stuff that for me is super easy to talk about, and it wouldn't create as much, you know, workload for me as I prepared to leave and had to create not only the content for that week, but 5 weeks worth of content. And so something that I thought was really interesting was the amount of time that I could create content. Like literally the same week I was able to create 5 podcast episodes, write show notes, create the cover art, schedule everything, schedule my newsletters. I was just like, this is great. Like, this is awesome. So I was like, because my podcast is video, I had forgotten how much of the level of complexity that creating a video podcast takes. And I was like, I really miss creating just audio content. It's just easier because you don't need to worry about, like, for instance, right now, if you're watching this on a video, my camera is going on and off because I have like the light is changing constantly. We have an overcast day. I did not plan for that. So even though I have a light, I'm just like looking at like the screen and just thinking, darn, should have closed the windows. But when you're doing an audio podcast, you don't care about that.
Oh my god, yeah, of course.
Isn't it?
I was just getting ready before this. I was like putting on makeup and like fixing my hair because like I looked rough in a few episodes here. Like if you're on YouTube and looking back, like a few episodes were really rough. I was like, oh no, I cannot look like this. Like even for the content, the reels that we create from the episodes, like I was like, I cannot share this. Like, look at me.
I just love having the help with the content from the show. That's like the main reason. It's not for YouTube really for me. I'm not. I could kind of take YouTube or leave it. To be totally honest, for us personally. But it really helps for the content on the content side, especially having graphic designers now and video editors who are like incredibly good at what they do. Because I think that just a clip from a podcast with subtitles, I even think that is sort of becoming not enough now. And now you even for at least for what I want to put out, you even need to have like the next thing, which is some supporting stock videos that really fit, and maybe a bit of music and a bit of, you know, and so I would love to just record audio. I agree. Like just like sitting down yourself in front of the mic and just talking. It's just depending on the type of person you are, I think it's just very enjoyable.
True, because it's just you and the microphone. And it's funny enough because I remember when, you know, forever ago when I was a radio host, and I remember, because this is a really interesting concept that not enough people talk about. When you are creating a live piece of content, when you're streaming live, or you know you have like a really tight deadline so you can't really mess up a lot, your brain activates in such a different way than when you know you're creating content that's recorded. You mess up so much more. I messed up so much more when I was creating audio-only content because, you know, I was like, all right, rock and roll, let's say, okay. And I like kind of in a way got a little like too relaxed, and I kept messing up, and I was like, this is absolutely not saving me that much time, because for some reason I just keep going back and forth. I was like, tongue like stuck, and I was like, oh gosh. So, you know, like there's so much to be said about like to be in the zone, and sometimes doing a video podcast gets you more in the zone because you're like, if I mess up, the cuts are going to be crazy. And so it like in a way, you know, sometimes you're like, oh, it's going to be easier on audio, and then you realize you're like, well, did I really save them much more time? So to your point.
Double-edged sword.
And not just that, like if you need the content, then you still have to record the content, like the 100%. Video content.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly like, if I think, I was just looking at someone, I don't remember who it was, and I was like thinking, wow, like they have an audio-only podcast, record all their content
separately
on the side, separately, still do the same form of content, like the captioned reels that a podcast would give you. And I'm like, dude, you're wasting your time here.
Yeah, you're doubling your workload for
You're doubling. Yeah. So even though it's like sometimes a bit annoying to do the video, like it's honestly, it probably still saves you time. Like I would say it still saves you time, especially if you can outsource. You can outsource the video editing. And
I completely agree with that. And to pivot to the LinkedIn stuff, we have found some like sort of surprising success with just putting our weekly newsletter on LinkedIn. I think we have like 70 people on it or something, which is like, I mean, it's not bad.
It's not huge, but
it's not amazing, but I haven't done any kind of like lead getting for that or tried to like encourage signups. Really, we've just been putting it out, and that's been something cool that we've done, and we've pretty much just used AI to turn our podcast into a newsletter, and then obviously we do edits as well on that, and but that's been great for us. So that's one thing that our podcast has helped us with on LinkedIn. But how do you approach LinkedIn just in general? Like how much of your podcast takes care of your LinkedIn posts for you? How much are you spending other than that? Like what's your approach to LinkedIn in general?
Okay, so that's a great one. By the way, congratulations. That's awesome. 70 people
Thanks.
With just kind of repurposing content is great. I'd say one of the things, and let me just tie it in with something that happened during my sabbatical. So one of the things that I wanted to test was the post and ghost method, which is you go on a platform, just schedule the content there. You don't really engage. And then all you do is just pumping content out. For the majority of platforms, if you don't normally really engage, what happens is that the platform is going to deprioritize your content because you're not engaging with other people. And especially like if you're doing the bare minimum, you're going to get bare minimum results, right? In a way. And so what I think it's important to understand is when you're creating content, you have to look at like what is the purpose of being on the social media platform. But LinkedIn works differently actually than most platforms. I scheduled all of the content on Instagram. My reach tanked. It was so bad. And because I'm like, my two platforms are Instagram and LinkedIn. And I take a slight different approach on LinkedIn for some of the content. So I think you have to understand as a creator, like what is your approach? So for me, I take a 50-50%. 50% comes from like actually understanding social media and wanting to create content for social media and also repurposing content for my podcast. So I take my long form content as a way to give the audience a more intimate take into my brain, into my expertise and my knowledge. And I use short form content on, Instagram and LinkedIn to create more fun and like personal take on things, because sometimes when you're going through the motions on your podcast, you don't sometimes find like a clip that really shows your personality in a way, because you're just like really focused on talking about it. So sometimes you can't really get to that point where like maybe you explain it too far out or something like that.
Yeah, or just to hop in briefly on that, like you can have something that you may have started like at 1 minute and it doesn't, the idea doesn't actually come to fruition until like minute 5, and there's just not a way to string that together in a clip where like where you need the start and you need the end to make it make sense. You can't make a clip of that. So that's where the podcast can suffer for in that respect. Yeah, it can be where in a way that it makes sense for a longer video, but that longer video, it's not going to perform well, but also it's not punchy enough to stop the scroll. So that's how I look at LinkedIn. I take as well that second approach, where it's like, okay, the podcast is giving me the in-depth stuff, and then like the short form content, it's still there.
there. So the way that I look at LinkedIn for my podcast is I do the same thing. I post my episodes as newsletters on Wednesdays and Fridays. And, Wednesdays is just like a duplication of an RSS automation, which is just a newsletter that has like the title, the description of the podcast, and a link to the podcast. That's it.
Okay.
So I take that like quote unquote lazy approach. And then I, on Fridays, create an actual like proper newsletter that I post and has some thoughts. Now, something that I think it's important to understand about social media is that you have so many window shoppers. You have people who follow your journey for years.
And say nothing.
But they're lurking in the shadows.
Yeah.
Of course.
And they're like actually appreciating what you're doing. And whether they are a podcaster or they want to become a content creator or someone who is just like more visible in their authority in the field, they can never make the leap. But when you share something that is like a milestone or something like that, they come out of the shadows to celebrate you. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. You've been looking. You've been keeping an eye on my stuff. Oh, interesting.
Yep.
And that's when you're looking at posts and sometimes you're seeing like likes but not comments, because that's something that happens on my post. I actually get a few messages privately about that thing. So if you're looking at my feed and you're like, oh, not that many people are commenting on, like podcast content or whatever it is because they actually message me privately.
Yeah,
and
personally,
before, we were like, oh, okay, likes are cool, but are people actually like appreciating the content? They are, but they may not do it publicly. So that's something that is important to understand. And so there's people that are like really out and about and they're excited to engage, but there's people that treat like LinkedIn literally like a magazine, like just
they're just looking around.
Through. Yeah.
So 100%.
Sure. I have never used LinkedIn to post anything before doing the podcast, like, and so this would apply to me too. I would just go in and look at other people.
I pretty much only comment on your stuff, Anna. That's like the only comments I leave. And
I feel so special.
And I had like a specific question. I saw that you the other day posted something that was like super personal. Like it went back to right when you were like a kid, and like it had like little. It was essentially a picture of Anna, and then a picture maybe of you as a kid or something, and then there was like a bunch of little like
arrows.
Thought bubbles and arrows around you of different facts about you, like went to school here, did this for and so why are you posting something so personal like that? What are you trying to accomplish by doing that?
Well, because we do business with humans. Great question. We do business with humans, and I keep telling clients all the time on podcasters, if you are giving a very bland, again, like the bare minimum kind of posts, people don't know who you are as a business owner and a person. And we do business with people who we connect with. Like, you don't want to do business with someone who you may not have like values in common. And that has been a transition on LinkedIn from strictly work related to more personal. Now you have the extreme where people are posting selfies, inappropriate selfies, photos of them with their kids, and sometimes moments that I personally thought, well, that kid did not consent to being online because that kid is going to grow up to an adult. So I'm always intentional. Again, it comes back to my like journalist background where I'm like, is this ethical to post? What are the repercussions of this? And it was me, so it was fine. But I really wanted to talk about, because my community is multilinguals and people who really like value interpersonal relationships. And so when I take that approach, I also on the caption talked about, like being multilingual, but also like talked about how it took me like 6 years to actually feel confident talking about things in English, because I was in this analysis paralysis. I was like, oh my God, people are going to judge me. And I know that that's something that a lot of multilinguals struggle with. I mean, Celine, I'm sure you can relate to like feeling like, do I know the right word? Did I mess up at some point in your career? You thought about it.
I definitely, my mother tongue's German, and I went to university in Milan, so I had university in Italian, and we used to really, really awful exams, like oral exams in front of everybody, in front of like 100 people. They would question you, and that would be the exam. They would not do it one-on-one, but with everybody in the room. And
Terrible.
Every time I was like, these people are going to think I'm like a elementary school kid because I use the simplest words to explain myself. I do obviously know the words of my subject, but I still use very simple language. And other people would use completely different words, like way higher in level, and I would feel so self-conscious about it. That's definitely something, because those things get better over time, but it takes you years, you know, to become very sophisticated with your language. Right?
Yes, exactly.
So I totally get it. That's definitely a struggle for sure.
And while you're still being visible, there's people that are not yet on that journey just yet. Whether they're just too worried for like the perception that people are going to have on them. Yeah. Because again, it takes courage to suck at another language, right? Like you will struggle in the beginning and eventually you'll get good enough. Or it sucks to be in a situation where you're like, oh my gosh, what is the word? I know there's like a more appropriate word, but the only one that I can come up with is this.
Exactly, correct.
While in your brain, you're like literally like mangling 3 or 4 languages at the same time.
Exactly.
And it's something that people struggle with, especially podcasters, because it's such a public thing to be broadcasting yourself in your subject of expertise. So that is the reason why I shared that post, because I knew that it would resonate with people. And also, I think that it's important to understand I love design, and I love good design, and I love how information is displayed. There's something called semiotics of communication, and I studied that when I was in journalism school. And so when you're posting something like an arrow that is going up, it's supposed to be positive, right? So when you're posting an arrow of going down, you're attaching that with like the crease, something, an emotion that isn't great. So whenever I'm creating posts like this, I'm thinking about what am I communicating beyond the words, beyond this looking pretty.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's definitely something to look into. I also definitely really resonate with what you said about the personal connection that you have with somebody that you choose to do business with. You're
buying the person. Yeah,
yes, that's something very big for me. And we definitely made that shift in Podigy over the last, 6 months or something, where we really started like showing our faces and marketing ourselves rather than the company. And I definitely see how that is like so important. And like you said about you choose to work with somebody who's like you resonate with their values and morals even. And that's like such a big thing for me. And that's definitely true. Like I will, if I see somebody and I'm like, oh, like this person does like, like important things that morally I would consider to be wrong, I'm probably not going to work with that person. I actually just heard a person saying, I was going to close a multi-million dollar offer with somebody, but then I found out he cheated on his wife and I didn't do it. And I'm like, wow, yeah. Like, that's like, if he's going to...
That's crazy.
Try to F over the person that he promised his life to, what is he going to do to this business partner, you think? Right?
Right.
If this is the moral that he has.
Exactly.
So I'm like, yeah, probably.
You are as a whole. Yeah, like you start broadcasting your personality, your values, your mission. Like it goes so much beyond just being a small business owner. So I totally agree.
And I had another thought, about what you said before, Anna. You said about the people not commenting on your LinkedIn directly, but messaging you. Would you say that is the same on Instagram as well, or do you feel this is more on LinkedIn?
Yes, 100%. And like again, let me preface this by saying that like the way that you create engagement is also based on how you put yourself out there. Like if you create content that is very controversial, that is like very extreme, very in your face, you're likely to get comments right away within that post. But if you're talking about intimate things, if you're talking about things that maybe people don't want to talk about publicly, or they actually want to connect deeper to you in a message, they don't want to just like comment, like that is something that you have to consider from like what is my goal with this post. And that's exactly what I create with every like every caption, or just what is the journey of the podcaster that is reading this. So that definitely happens on Instagram too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I have definitely seen that. I just created recently a new Instagram for like the whole, like more like a business Instagram, I guess, for myself. Mm-hmm. And I have definitely noticed people doing that with me as well, like just messaging me directly because they wanted to like talk about something. And it's quite some, like it's deep, I guess, like deeper things. And so they messaged me directly for sure. Funny enough, this morning, I heard this Instagram expert or like social media expert talking on TikTok. It was actually a real podcast, funny enough. And he was talking about Instagram growth and how people look at it in the wrong way. And he was actually saying that growing Instagram happens in the DMs and in stories and in like interaction in like DMs rather than comments and likes. But
that's
people
very true.
Still think about Instagram as your posts, like the square posts, but in the feed posts. But it's actually not about that. And the accounts that have most grown are the ones grown through stories and DMs, actually. So that makes totally sense as well on that end.
Yeah. And because it works so well, like LinkedIn has tried to do that in a way. At some point they had LinkedIn stories, which I don't think took off that much. And it was just so weird. Praise to LinkedIn for them testing features. And I remember like I was working on these podcasts many years ago when live streaming to LinkedIn was not optional yet. Like it was just beta. And so only a handful of people actually did it. And so, yeah, like they've been really testing a lot of different approaches to LinkedIn and making LinkedIn more like Instagram, like more like a place where people actually want to hang out with, hang out in. Because at some point, I don't know, like I've been using LinkedIn for many years now, like well over 7 years. And I remember hating LinkedIn because it was so formal. It was like me, my achievements, showing off. And it has merged and blended into we're all humans. And funny enough, like this got so overused that y'all probably saw these posts where there was someone talking about like the way that people tell stories on LinkedIn is like, I was on my way to a job interview. And then like something happened where like, you know, they showcase their humanity, you know, like they're like, oh, there was a car and there was a dog that was going to get run off by the car. And so like I, you know, got out of my way to save the dog. And, you know, I then got late and then I was rushing to the interview. And who was interviewing me? The dog. Because it has become so ridiculous where people just like create this like over the top narrative, you know, like it's insane. So I thought that encapsulated so well like how extreme LinkedIn can be. But again, the key to doing LinkedIn well is to understand your values, how you best create a content. If you don't like creating video content, and if you don't have someone like you guys where like you have a team where someone actually creates content for you, well, you can create text and just text-based. You can create articles, newsletters. You can create just, you know, posts that take you on a journey and it's like interesting to read. If you like creating images, then you can use images, which by the way perform better if you put them on PDF format. So if you're on Canva, really? Export that as a PDF and upload that because the experience isn't great. Because they display really weird. And then if you want to do audio, like live events there, like you can do that too. Like it's just such, and articles, obviously. But it just really understanding where is your, you know, strength. And for me is to create fun, engaging. I reuse a lot of my LinkedIn, of my Instagram content on my LinkedIn because I want to bring that different approach to like boring, same,
you don't
same
want
old,
it to be overly formal.
Yeah, 100%. So how long have you had your newsletter on LinkedIn?
So I started this year. I think I started maybe in April or something. I could probably check that.
And how many people do you have?
I have about 1,500 connections, and on my newsletter, I have about 420, I think. And so every time I publish one, and again, I had this like period of time where I scheduled all of my content during my sabbatical, and we're recording this mid-September. And so, of course, like I have not been as visible. So the algorithm has impacted a little bit, but not as much as other platforms. I still got engagement. I still got messages. Funny enough, someone who follows me, again, for months, actually shared one of my newsletters with his community. And eventually my podcast actually made it to the chart. Like, I think it was like under 100 on Portugal, because like he shared it with his community, and there weren't that many people creating content in August. So my podcast shot up, and I was like benefited by that. But again, people resonate, and the guy normally actually never engages with my content. He like follows me, but that one day that like post struck a chord with him, and he was like, you know what, I want to share this. All of that while like I was gone. So again,
it's very cool.
You don't need to be constantly on social media and breathing and like just being all over it, but you can schedule stuff, but you have to take time to respond to the comments, because then nobody wants to talk to a wall, right? Like people want to create engagement. That's what social media is. And LinkedIn, people expect, you don't have to always like comment the most intelligent things. You can just like support others and post stuff like that.
100%.
Yeah, of course.
I agree.
So what would be like the best approach for somebody to take to LinkedIn? Like how would, like Monday to Sunday, like what are the activities that somebody could do for their show? Let's say they released an episode on Monday, then what would the week look like or something?
Okay, so looking at how social media was done before, the gurus of social media that still like push this like rhetoric today is like Monday is like Motivation Monday, Tuesday is like, you know, Tuesday tip. And they used to do this, and it's so limiting because this is not sustainable for most people. You run out of things to say. You're missing out on the organic things that happen in your life and your business. And so what I do is a combination of both. I know that I can do Monday motivations on Mondays, but sometimes the angle is completely different. It's like a little bit talking about maybe how you're losing motivation, or how I'm talking about, like, it's not always the same type of post, it's not always the same angle. And I give myself permission to be flexible on that, because sometimes I don't want to talk about, like, if you feel like you are on a downward in your business, you don't want to talk about motivation or uplifting things. So like ride that wave as you're feeling things. So that's my utmost like suggestion. But what I also do is when I'm creating content, I create content on Canva, and I'm an idea generator. This may not work for everyone. So how I'm creating content is I'm creating a post. I do this with memes all the time. By the way, I share memes on LinkedIn. Yes, you can do it if it's like safe and not disrespectful. Like people actually find them really funny. And so basically, what I do is when I'm crafting that post, sometimes I have another idea and I create that idea right away. And I don't schedule and post everything, but I know that like if I'm really feeling like the other day, I just experienced so much technical issues on everything that I wanted to create. So I was like, I'm just going to go to Canva and create memes to get myself better. And I created so many memes that I have enough memes to go me through like once a week, every single month.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I created like 7. I was like, all right, let's go. So again, where is your zone of genius? Don't hold back when you're thinking about like, and that feels also like for podcast episodes, write down all the ideas for episodes and stuff. So it can be like one tiny thing that happened on your podcast that made you think about all of these other things.
Yeah.
You don't need to
triggers.
constantly. Yes, exactly. Like people get it wrong all the time. Promotion for your podcast does not need to say everything that was said on the podcast. You can actually extrapolate to say, hey, I actually didn't get to talk about this on my show, but it got me thinking about this one thing.
Yeah, or this one thing we talked about got me thinking about this other thing that I was thinking about.
100%.
You kind of frame it like a story.
Exactly. So that's how I look at social media. I don't normally like go for the standard. I will create more batching because like I thought it was like really fun, but I also pay a lot of attention of what people are talking about. And I have a podcast episode on how to read your listeners' minds. And so I'll make sure that you get the link to that episode. But one of the things I'm talking about is exactly that. Pay attention to what people are talking about, because then you can take those worries, those excitement, like whatever is being talked about, and your listeners like, oh my God, are you in my head? I'm like, no, I just been reading what people are saying. And I think that people look at content creation as like these really stale and like really structured way of creating content. And while you can repurpose old content, sometimes I do, it's way more doable in the long term. Like Gary Vee says, don't create, document. And so document what's happening, talk about what's happening, and don't think that you have to be always perfect. Like I sometimes accidentally put spelling mistakes. Sometimes I don't like it. I feel really annoyed, but I'm like, I'm not taking down that post.
Yeah,
I know it happens to me too. Of course, like, and I feel like we're not native speakers. Like, cut us some slack. Like, don't be so serious.
Sometimes it's my friends who are actually commenting on like misspells and they're joking, and I was like, so it's fine. So did I kind of answer your question, or do you want me to talk about like different types of content that people can create? Like,
no, I think you did. I think that honestly, the whole episode is really good for, like, we kind of touched more on the importance of sharing like personal content rather than
we did
like sort of like a mixture of like putting a face to a business, but also, like you said, document, or like Gary Vee said, like documenting instead of creating content. That's totally true, and I think that would make it a bit more fun and accessible for people to create content, because people love sharing things that are going on in their lives, and I guess they just think that people won't care, or that people will get annoyed with it being, too mushy or too personal. But I have even found, like, if I post a picture of something podcast related on our personal page, and we used to have a bunch of followers, but we got hacked, and so we had to restart our page, and our Instagram page. And if I post something about Celine and I in a picture of both of us with a story of some kind, of something that we've been dealing with or something that we went through, it'll get like 3 times the engagement as anything else.
Yep.
And then you pin those to the top of your page, and now you've got a story of kind of who you are as a person. And that plays a huge role in people deciding whether or not they want to actually do business with you. So, but it's also fun. Like, it also feels good to share stuff like that and see that you get such a good response, because it's like, oh, well, now I can do more of that, and I like doing that. So
exactly.
Yeah,
in moderation.
Yeah, definitely.
Totally.
I feel like we circle back on a lot of things all the time. Like, for example, be real on social media with what you share. I feel like that's a really big one. And then another one is like, just do it. Like, don't be so afraid of making a mistake, but just go and do it. And I have to repeat this so many times to all sorts of people, on the podcast, on to clients, to so many people. I continue to repeat these things. They're so simple, but people just overthink it. Then they overthink the content, they overthink the caption, they overthink the podcast episode, and then they don't want to release this because they sound a little bit like that. And then just do it. Just start somewhere. We all have to start, and it's not going to be 100% perfect every time.
100%. And you know what? I also tell clients, like, a good way to understand how to do this, because again, people can start overthinking, is 1, would these be relevant to your audience? And 2, is it interesting? We all at some point, like, Big Brother was something that was sold across, like, as a concept all around the world. Everybody loves knowing about being nosy, right? Well, I didn't really care for much for that. Like, it was one of the shows that was on television for so long. People want to know what it's like, the behind the scenes. And if anything, try to do a combination of like, why did you think about this? Because again, everyone is tired of the hacks and like the tips and the blah, blah, blah. You cannot replicate your story or someone else's story, right? Like, that's the thing. I mean, you can if you're a fake. But, the idea is that do that, but also think about this one thing that is, can this help someone else?
Yeah.
Like, if you look at it from the perspective of like, I am helping by sharing the story, it makes everything easier because you're putting it out. And especially podcast episodes, they are intimate. Big podcast creators and people who are in the online world, they all scaled back from being this perfect millionaire to being a human. Yeah. Pay attention. Pay attention online when you're going online. If the big bros are doing this, there's value in you being you, especially if you're not like a millionaire just yet. Like, go do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
I agree with that. Looking at millionaires and billionaires and what they do and what they're interested in and what they're adopting right now. That's a good hint as to where things might be going. Not just because they're like they've made it to 1 million, and so they're also obviously they're smart when it comes to business, but also because they've got connections and friends up at the top who are also, you know, tipping them off on different things that are upcoming and giving them referrals to things that are upcoming. So yeah, totally agree with that. So thank you for coming on again.
Yeah,
and,
this is amazing.
Yeah, and we always enjoy talking to you.
Same.
And I think that we will link the one episode that you were talking about.
100%, yes.
And we'll also, maybe we'll just link your LinkedIn so that people can go check out what you're doing over there.
Yeah, 100%.
Go peek, but engage. Say hi.
Yeah. I do a lot of window shopping, but I do tend to engage with your content because like I want to say congrats, or I want to say like love this or whatever. So I do feel like your content actually calls out engagement in a lot of ways. So
yes, for sure.
Yeah, that's very good. Where do you want people to go? Where's the one place that would be best?
Of course. So actually I have a mini course that is teaching like a lot of the things that I'm talking about if you hate social media. It's called Beyond the Trends. And so I'll put the links in there. So if you're trying to understand what I'm talking about, like that's a great way to start. But I'm actually starting a coaching program that is like half consulting, half coaching. So you don't have to do all the work. Cool. It's called Pod Party. And I'll have links to, because, you know, you want to have fun. We all want to have fun. Like, because podcasting can be such a lonely place. So I'll make sure that I have like the links there. It's from struggling to success in 90 days because, you know, that's pretty much like how fast you can see results. You can't just see like in a week. And I would not find it ethical to say 1 week you'll be fixed. Like that's
oh my God,
how
no.
it works.
100%.
Yes, and obviously my podcast. So the podcast space everywhere. So all the 3 places you can check out things.
We will link that. Just send that over to us. And we'll drop that in the show notes for sure.
Yeah.
And
Thank
any
you so
closing
much.
remarks? Anybody?
No.
No, we're good.
I'm good.
Covered everything on the mind.
Yeah, we did. Thank you,
Sweet.
guys.
Perfect. Thank you, Anna, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so you made it this far, which means you probably found something or learned something valuable from this. So don't be selfish. Please share it with somebody else so that they can learn something from it too. That's all we ask for all this free content. We're trying to build a community and help as many people as possible do better in podcasting, make better podcasts, get more from their podcasts in less time. That's our goal here. And if you want to support that goal, then just click the link and send it to one person who you know would love you for it.